Hey everybody, welcome to the channel. WildMax wanting to bring you another Raid Shadow Legends video. And today we're going to be doing our official Chimera Clan Boss guide. I'll be going over the rewards, doing a quick overview of the basics, doing a deeper dive on each individual form, along with how to effectively counter it, and example champions that can help you do so. And finally, I'll be showing you example teams of both earlier and later games. So with that, let's get into it. So before we start looking into the mechanics of the Chimera, let's start looking into why you should be doing this clan boss. Number one, if for no other reason, Embrace the Anomaly. Amazing champion, free mythical that you can earn from the chests in the Chimera Clan Boss. This champion base form is an incredible support with a lot of disruption and unique mechanics like necrosis, and in the second form becomes an incredible nuker. If for no other reason, you should be doing Chimera to earn yourself your Embrace. So in addition to Embrace, you're also going to be earning crafting materials that you can use to make some of the best relics in the game, including one of the most powerful Stormcaller, one of the best damage dealer relics in the entire game. You're also going to be able to earn circular gemstones with powerful ones like Boss Slayer. They give you 10% extra damage to boss encounters, one of the best PvE gemstones in the entire game. And finally, for the clan, help yourself and your clanmates win clashes, and you guys are going to have access to some of the best materials, including the chest that lets you get mythical gemstones for any shape, not just the circular ones. So now let's do a brief overview of the battle mechanics for the newer players out there, as well as a quick refresher for you experienced Chimera Slayers. So the Chimera has 4 unique forms, each of them with their own mechanics. Those are the Ultimate form, Ram form, Lion form, and Viper form. Only one of these can be active at a time, so unlike Hydra, you don't have to worry about multiple forms coming at you at the same time. Now, the Chimera is going to change forms in a set rotation throughout the entire encounter. It's going to go Ultimate Ram, Ultimate Lion, Ultimate Viper, and then it's going to repeat that whole rotation until the encounter is done. Each of those forms is going to have 5 boss turns to do any of its mechanics before it switches over to the next one, and you will have a total of 65 boss turns to do the maximum amount of damage and earn the most rewards you can from each key that you use in the Chimera. Just like with Hydra Clan Boss, Chimera is also going to have different affinities depending on the rotation. So every month you're going to see the Ultimate form change its affinity, and all the other forms are going to have one set affinity that they're all going to share, and that's going to change every 28 days. Now, unlike the Hydra Clan Boss, where pretty much all you need to do is do your damage, stay alive, and then pick up your rewards at the end, the Chimera Clan Boss has an additional set of conditions that you can meet during the encounter in order to get extra rewards called trials. Each non-ultimate form is going to have 3 sets of different unique trials that are going to have conditions that do not change depending on the rotation. The only thing that changes every rotation is going to be the rewards. You can earn things like gemstones, crafting materials for relics, or upgrading materials for relics, and you'll be getting these rewards upon completion of the trial immediately after your run. By rotating the rewards for the different trials, Plarium's trying to incentivize you to bring different kinds of champions into your composition and not just focus on doing the most damage. Trials are also the best way to earn crafting materials for the Chimera. From the top chest in Ultra Nightmare for the 112.5 million chest, you earn anywhere from 5 to 7 legendary crafting materials. You can't even earn mythical materials. The only place to earn mythical mats for the Chimera is actually through trials. So what you're going to ultimately want to do is build a bunch of different teams for Chimera that can shine during different monthly rotations and that can meet a lot of different conditions based on where those mythical materials are hiding behind those trial conditions. So aside from being the best place to get crafting materials in the Chimera Clan Boss, trials are also useful for maximizing your Chimera Clash points. Every trial you complete adds a small multiplier to the points you earn from the damage that you do during the boss encounter. And the thing to note about that is that, unfortunately, the trial only multiplies the points from the damage you deal after completing that trial. So if you want to complete a bunch of trials at the very end, unfortunately, it's not going to do much with that multiplier. Now, the last thing to consider before we dive into the different forms is how do you maximize the rewards for this encounter? So obviously, if you're going to be aiming for as many mythical materials as possible, then the best thing you can do is farm Ultra Nightmare, use both your keys on it. It'll be lowering the amount of chests you get overall, but that's where you can earn the most possible mythical materials in order to start crafting those OP relics. However, My recommendation is, if you have not yet fused Embrace the Anomaly, you should be hitting Ultra Nightmare and Nightmare, aiming for the top chest in terms of damage every time so that you can get the most fragments for Embrace. Once you have him on your account, at that point you switch to farming both your keys on Ultra Nightmare and focus on getting at least 112.5 million for that top chest, but focus on getting as many trials done to earn those mythical materials as possible. It's going to be how you're going to progress your account the most. So now with the basics and the rewards covered, let's get into how you can actually succeed at this encounter, starting with the ultimate form. So this is obviously the form you're going to be seeing the most during the entire fight based on that rotation that we went over in the beginning. You're going to be seeing this form in the beginning, at the end, and between each time that the other forms change. So before we get into all the other mechanics of the ultimate form, the one that I really want to call out is this passive right here. For every 3 trials that your team manages to complete during your run, the ultimate form is going to be getting stronger. So it's going to be getting minor stat boosts for every 3 trials, things like 5% increased attack, 5% increased crit damage, along with ignore effects. So things like ignore unkillable, ignore block damage, and ignore percent defense are going to make it that much more difficult for you as you complete more trials through your run. Now, the ultimate form also puts out an AoE provoke and decreased speed. You want to either make sure to get rid of that AoE provoke as quickly as possible or prevent its application in the first place, because the ultimate form takes 50% less damage from provoked champions. Very quick way to lose that top damage score that you're going for. The other problem with this form is the AoE buff strip. So if it's facing targets with no buffs, this form takes 10% less damage, stacking for every champ you have up to 50%. So if it strips all buffs, it's going to be taking less damage. And more problematic than that is that it will deal 10% extra damage with that ability for every buff removed. Now, this is by far the most problematic ability it has. So protected buffs and things like that are very helpful because this can deal an absolute ton of damage, especially as your trials start to stack up. In terms of how you can counter this form, obviously you want to make sure to cleanse your team as quickly as possible and get that provoke off or prevent its application in the first place through things like block debuffs. Additionally, protected buffs are going to be extremely helpful on the ultimate form and in other forms in the Chimera as well. So if you do happen to have protection sets available or champs that feature protected buffs, those can be very, very helpful for getting through this. So in terms of champs, they're going to be beneficial for tackling the ultimate form. Champs that bring cleanse, block buffs like Elva Autumnborn and Cardio, extremely helpful. Also, champions that have protected buffs in their kit like Cardio or Brogni are going to help to keep those on and make sure that the damage reduction passive on the ultimate form never has a chance to trigger. Next up, we're going to be discussing one of the most problematic forms in the entire encounter, the Ram form. So unlike the ultimate form, each of the alternate forms in the Chimera has a unique mechanic that cannot be found on any other encounter in the entire game. So the Ram is going to be putting duel on your lowest crit damage champion. At that point, your champion is going to be locked into only using their A1, and they're going to be receiving 50% extra damage from the Ram form. Now, your other 4 champions that are not under the duel effect are going to be dealing 50% less damage to the Chimera over the course of the duel. The only way to break a champ out of the duel is to either have the Chimera kill them or to do 1% of the Chimera's max HP in terms of damage. That's going to be marked by a little purple sliver on its HP bar. However, you can put the Ram form under a fear effect, and if you manage to do that, then the Ram form will be taking 100% damage even from your other champions over the course of the duel. So in addition to duel, the Ram form can also stun with a conditional extra turn. It can reduce turn meter. It removes block debuffs from your team, making it easier to land the stun. And finally, it has a conditional multi-hitting ability, and this is the most problematic one. So first, what it does is it tries to convert all buffs to their negative debuff counterparts on a specific champion. Then it will conduct a hit. That hit will be made stronger for each buff that it managed to convert. And if it deals at least 20% of that champion's max HP and damage, it will keep repeating the hit until that champion is gone. And unfortunately, we are just now getting to the passives for this form. So by far the most problematic one is going to be 25% reflect damage to all targets, except those that are under the duel. So all your other champions are going to be having to deal with that reflect damage. And it has a passive that ignores 50% defense for attacking anything under Veil, Perfect Veil, or Taunt. And finally, it has a passive where it reflects back debuffs to the sender. However, luckily that one is on an active effect with a cooldown. So very evidently a difficult form to deal with. Such a stacked kit on this boss. It's actually kind of ridiculous. However, luckily there are ways that you can counter it. And the one that I've bolded at the top there, the one that I think is the most important for you to consider for your team composition, is to make sure, no matter what, that your only reviver or your primary reviver is not your lowest crit damage champion. You know that that duel effect is going to be going on the reviver. So even if the reviver survives the duel, it's going to be locked into only using its A1. There's going to be a reflect damage going out, which could very quickly and very easily wipe one of your runs. Other things to consider are fears on the ram form are going to disable that 50% decreased damage for anybody outside of the duel. However, again, because of the reflect damage, that can be pretty devastating. So bringing something like block damage or unkillable, and to a lesser extent leech, can potentially help your damage dealers to continue doing damage to the ram form and not be completely stopped by that reflect damage. Now, it's also going to be helpful to bring a block debuffs and a cleanser to your composition for that stun that the ram form brings. Finally, let's look at example champions. So Skathix brings that cleanse and the block debuffs. That's going to be really helpful. Additionally, if Skathix is your lowest crit damage champion, he does have a passive that puts up a block damage if he drops below 30% HP. So that is a potential way to avoid your champion getting killed through the duel. Alsgore Crimson Horn is bringing you your block damage, so your damage dealers can just go ahead and keep going against that reflect damage and not knock themselves out. And Lydia is obviously a great champ, but also brings fear in this case. Now, after looking at the ram form, the lion form is going to be a lot less intimidating. So whereas the ram form brought the duel, the lion form brings the hunter's gaze. The Chimera is going to be putting this debuff on your highest defense champion. Once that debuff is on that champion cannot have any damage reduced to it, redirected, or otherwise blocked in any kind of way. So it's just going to make sure they take maximum damage from the lion form. Luckily, it can be cleansed off. However, if it is cleansed off, the lion will go in using its A1 ability, which deals massive AoE damage. So that is something to be considered if you're about to cleanse it off during the encounter. Other than that, all you really need to know about the lion form is that it deals a lot of damage if you don't have a cleanse present. So it can get extra turns when it kills a target. It puts a decreased defense and weaken on a target and then attempts to spread debuffs, and it deals a lot of AoE damage. It's got built-in ignore percent defense in its kit and built-in turn meter. So in terms of countering the lion form Chimera, block debuffs, cleanse are going to be the two best things that you can bring on your composition, along with some survivability and some heals, because this form can deal quite a bit of damage. So champions like Elva, again, cleanse, block debuffs, great. Pythion, same reason, as well as that damage reduction passive, extremely helpful. Brogni brings some good tankiness to the team and can also help with that cleanse, and then Skathix as an epic as well. And last, but certainly not least, another kind of tricky form to deal with, but not nearly as annoying as the ram form, and that is the Viper. And with the Viper form, we've finally arrived at the last unique mechanic of the Hydra, and that is necrosis. So whenever one of your champions dies, every other champion that you have on the field is going to be getting one stack of necrosis. If two of your champions die, all the rest of your champions get 2 stacks, so it goes up to 4 stacks since you have 5 total champions in the encounter. For each stack of necrosis on your champion will receive 5% of their max HP in damage at the start of their turn. The only way to remove necrosis off a champion is to revive a dead ally. So you either have necrosis because somebody's dead on your team, or you don't. It's that simple. So the best way to approach the Viper form is to make sure that none of your champs die in the first place. Now, on necrosis is more of a passive, plenty of active abilities on the Viper form as well. It's got turn meter fill on its kit. It's got a multi-crowd control hitting AoE, so it's going to be attempting to place everything from like petrification to stun on all your champions. So bringing block debuffs is going to be extremely effective and extremely helpful against this form. It's also going to be attempting to place poisons and poison sensitivity, as well as detonating those poisons. It's also going to be trying to put hex and heal reduction on your champions, and then transfer any debuffs from the Chimera onto your champions under hex or heal reduction. And finally, the The big one, the problematic one, is going to be the buff steal that it does. So unlike Head of Mischief in Hydra, where it only steals from one champion, this is going to be a full AoE team buff steal. So if the Chimera, the Viper, manages to steal something like a counterattack or block debuffs, that could be really problematic, or increase res, for example, could be really problematic and could quickly result in losing one or two champions, and then Necrosis comes into play, and your run is going to be really threatened. All right, so now looking at the other passives on the Viper form other than Necrosis. First one is going to be an active effect with a cooldown, but it is going to be a denied revive attempt for your team. So if you do happen to have one or multiple champions that go down, if you attempt to revive one of them, that's going to be denied, and unfortunately that's going to mean Necrosis is going to remain on your team, dealing more damage. So that's potentially very, very devastating. The other one is going to be at the start of the Viper's turn, every poison debuff on it is going to be attempted to be transferred onto your team. So if you're bringing poisons for the Viper form, be aware of that. Additionally, any champs you do revive are going to have 25% less turn meter and HP than would have been given to them from the revive. So for example, if you have a Pythion that's going to be reviving your champions, should be coming in with 50% turn meter and HP. In this case, it would only be 25% turn meter and 25% HP. Again, making it more difficult to keep your champions alive once they start getting low. So the best strat on the Viper form is never allow them to get low or die in the first place. And finally, it can remove block active skills from itself if it manages to kill a champion. So spoiler alert, block active skills is going to be an option on the Viper form. So looking now at the counters, as already mentioned, block active skills is an option for the Viper and is also one of the conditions for its trials. So bringing that's going to be extremely helpful, preventing it from using all those nasty steel, the poisons, the detonation, all that. Very useful. Having a cleanse for your team is going to be essential here for those poisons and all the other crowd control debuffs that this thing can bring. Having a block buffs up on the Viper form is extremely important in case it does manage to steal some of your buffs, and some of them might be something that could potentially wipe your run. Again, I've lost runs before, unfortunately, having a counterattack from my Newt stolen off. Very unfortunate, and you'd really hate to see it later into a really good run. Then having protected buffs. Obviously, if you have protected buffs, those cannot be stolen by the attempted steal from the Viper form. And finally, having block debuffs can ensure that no poisons or crowd control go out in the first place. So looking at example champions that excel against the Viper form, again, Skathix, great champion for it. Ugo bringing that block buffs, bringing a cleanse, excellent champion with the heals. Elva, AoE, Elva and Pythion both revivers with an AoE cleanse with block debuffs, very helpful. And Lydia bringing her block active skills on this champion, again, excellent. All of them really, really useful. So now we've seen what all the mechanics are on the various forms, and we've identified what the best ways are to counter them. So here's a list that I've made for team building when considering what to bring to the Chimera and on your different team compositions. For priority elements, we saw cleanse was one of the most important by far. Having good cleansers, a good reviver is going to be really, really important. After that, the Chimera is really fast, and there is no turn limit that anybody's so far been able to hit as of the filming of this video, as far as I know, in the community for turns on the Chimera. So you are limited only by however many turns your team can take. So that means that Chimera is taking 65, so you want to bring as much turn meter fill, increase speed, and decrease speed to make that disparity the biggest possible, to make sure you're taking as many turns for every turn the Chimera takes. That's going to make sure you deal both the most damage, and it's going to allow your healers and your everything to just catch up to all the mechanics that the Chimera is going to be bringing every turn. However, if you do somehow manage to hit the 1500 turn base limit for pretty much all encounters in Raid Shadow Legends except for like Hydra, if you do manage to hit that, I want to see that on a Reddit post somewhere or something like that as a brag post, because that would be incredible. And at that point, you can honestly consider bringing less turn meter fill or dropping increased speed. However, other important buffs to bring other than just making that turn disparity is bringing things that are going to help your damage dealers. So things like decreased defense and weaken, things like that that are important. Decreased defense being the most important damage boosting debuff in the game. Other good elements you can bring that are really going to help you deal more damage on like the Ram form are going to be a block damage and unkillable, things like that. And then anything you can bring that's going to make your champions more survivable is also going to be extremely helpful. But again, if you manage it, if you have the gear, protected buffs, as we saw from multiple forms, everything from Ultimate to Viper, are going to be so helpful for your team, game breaking for some of those moves that the Chimera is going to be trying to use, and essentially going to be making it do so much less damage and just completely changing the way that some of your champs can go. You can just basically laugh off certain mechanics. So if you do have protected buffs that you can bring for your buff-heavy champions, protection set is going to be so incredibly valuable. And finally, to wrap up the video, as promised in the beginning, I wanted to share a couple of teams with you that are going to be one more accessible than the other, but both of them are going to be really effective in Chimera because they bring all those priority elements that we just identified. So in this case, we have everything from turn meter fill, revive, heal, cleanse, decrease speed, increase speed. Every single one of the priority elements that we identified are present in this team. And it is, with all epics, fairly accessible. The other team that I'm recommending here is a lot of them are either past fusions or earnable champions in the game. And again, bringing all of the crucial buffs and elements that we've identified before, but in this case, a little bit higher end, a little bit more damage, and bringing a little more to the table. But both of these teams are going to be very successful in Chimera and should be getting you those materials and the chests that you need to be getting your Empress. And there you have it, everybody, the ultimate Chimera Clan Boss guide. Hopefully this video has helped you understand the encounter a little better. It's going to help you build better teams and get more rewards. If you liked today's video, please consider liking, subscribing for more content in the future. Let me know down in the comments below if there's any other champion guides or game mode guides or any kind of content that you'd like to see on the channel. Thank you for watching today's video. Thank you for your time. Have a great day, and I will catch you in the next one.